The grandmother.
That night, everything was normal. My girlfriend and I watched a horror movie called The Conjuring. She was scared, but I didn't care. I even made jokes about ghosts after the movie. Then we turned off the lights and went to sleep. A few hours later, I suddenly woke up. I felt someone gently touching my hand. I thought it was her, but when I looked, her hand was next to her body. Slowly, I turned my head. My grandmother was standing next to my bed. She was wearing the same clothes she wore before she died. My body froze. I could only stare at her. For a few seconds, she touched my hand. Then, without a word, she stepped back. And right in front of me, she walked through the wall. When she disappeared, I breathed. I thought it was over. But at that moment, I felt someone touching my hand again. This time, from under the bed.
The taxi.
One night, I was coming home late from work and got into a taxi. I gave the driver the address and the car started moving. But after a few moments, I noticed someone sitting next to the driver, a woman in a white dress. She made no sound. She just turned her head once and looked straight at me. Her eyes were not normal. I screamed without thinking and said, "Stop the car!" The driver got scared and stopped immediately. I rushed out. He also got out and said, "What happened?" I pointed inside the car with a shaking hand, but the seat was empty. No one was there. We both stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then the driver slowly said, "But I didn't pick up anyone from the beginning." Before I could say anything, a very quiet voice came from inside the car.
So, what am I?
The student.
At first, I thought it was just a simple childhood habit. One of my students would sometimes stand by the window, stare outside, and laugh softly. From where I was standing, there was nothing special outside. One day, I went next to him and asked quietly, "What do you see?" Without looking at me, he said, "My grandfather, he is waving at me." I felt something was wrong. I looked in the same direction, and after a few moments, I saw a man. Far away, next to a tree, he was standing and waving his hand slowly. When I looked closer, I recognized him. He was the same person whose funeral I had attended 1 year ago. I couldn't breathe. I looked again. No one was there anymore. I quickly asked my student, "Where is he now?" This time, he turned his head toward me, smiled, and said very quietly, "He's not outside anymore. Now he's inside the classroom."
The little girl in the cold.
One night, I was walking home when I saw a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, sitting alone at the corner of the street. I said hello and asked for her address, but she didn't answer. I held her hand. It was freezing. I took off my jacket and put it on her. I tried to warm her hand with my breath, but nothing changed. So I had to hold her in my arms to keep her warm. But after a few moments, my own body started to freeze. I became so cold that I couldn't move anymore. Right then, the little girl slowly lifted her head and smiled. A strange smile, cold, empty. Suddenly, a car stopped. It was one of my neighbors. He said, "Need a ride?" I forced myself to move toward the car. But when I looked, my arms were empty. No one was in my arms. Only my jacket was left. I got in the car, out of breath. My hands were still freezing. The driver looked at me and said with surprise, "This jacket, where did you get it?" I said, "What do you mean? It's mine." He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said very slowly, "A few years ago, a little girl died from the cold right here. When they found her, this same jacket was on her."
The brother.
When I was a child, I was never alone. I used to play with my older brother in our room. He never went outside. He was always there, next to me. But the strange thing was, my parents never talked to him, like he didn't even exist. I thought it was normal. Until the day we moved out of that house. Everything was packed and we left, but he stayed inside the room. He stood behind the door and just watched me. I was crying and saying, "Take him too," but no one even looked. That was the last time I saw him. Years later, my mother told me the truth. I never had a brother. He had died 1 year before that. Now I have a son of my own. Last night, when I was walking past him, I saw him playing with someone. I asked him, "Who are you talking to?" Without looking at me, he said, "You still remember the old room." I never told my son why we left that house.